He never expected this to happen on his birthday. On the morning of his 60th birthday, billionaire tech mogul Adrian Cole decided to do something normal for once: pick up his own cake. Dressed simply, without security, he walked into a small local bakery he had quietly funded years ago. The young bakery worker recognized him instantly, but instead of smiling, her face tightened with emotion. As Adrian reached for the beautiful three-tier cake, she suddenly hurled it straight at him. The shop fell silent. Frosting covered his suit. Customers gasped. Then she shouted, "Do you even remember us?" Years ago, his company had shut down a factory in her neighborhood, costing her father his job. Adrian stood frozen, then quietly asked her to tell him everything. Instead of anger, he listened. A week later, he reopened a new community center and job program in that same neighborhood, dedicated to her father. That shocking cake throw didn't ruin his birthday. It changed his life forever. In the glittering heart of New York City, where ambition moved faster than traffic and reputations were built on spectacle, billionaire tech magnate Alexander Pierce decided that his 50th birthday would not merely be celebrated. It would be immortalized. Founder of the revolutionary AI firm Neurovale, Pierce was known for bold launches, extravagant galas, and a personality that oscillated between visionary genius and ruthless perfectionist. For his milestone birthday, he wanted something symbolically simple: a cake. Not just any cake, but one that would embody his journey from a scholarship kid in a cramped Brooklyn apartment to a titan of Wall Street. His assistant contacted the renowned boutique bakery Sweet Crumbs Atelier, a modest yet beloved establishment famous for intricate handcrafted cakes that tasted as extraordinary as they looked. Sweet Crumbs Atelier was owned by Maria Alvarez, a second-generation baker who had inherited the shop from her mother. Unlike the polished corporate catering companies Pierce usually employed, Maria's bakery had heart. Its walls decorated with old family photos, its counters dusted daily with flour like soft snowfall. Maria believed cakes carried stories, and when Pierce's team requested a towering 10-tier masterpiece shaped like a rising phoenix crafted in edible gold leaf, she felt both awe and unease. The design specifications were meticulous: layers infused with rare Madagascar vanilla, Belgian chocolate ganache aged for weeks, organic berries flown in from private farms, and a sugar sculpture depicting Pierce holding a glowing globe. The budget was astronomical, but so were the expectations. Pierce's assistant emphasized repeatedly that any flaw would be unacceptable. Maria, though seasoned, sensed something unsettling in that word. For days, the bakery staff worked tirelessly. Among them was Ethan Cole, a quiet yet gifted decorator who had joined Sweet Crumbs just months earlier. Ethan possessed a rare artistic touch, able to sculpt sugar as if it were marble. Yet he carried a quiet intensity, a simmering fire behind thoughtful eyes. He listened silently as Maria described the cake's symbolism and the pressure attached to it. Ethan asked few questions, focusing instead on perfecting every detail. What no one at the bakery knew was that Ethan had a history intertwined with Alexander Pierce's empire, one marked not by celebration, but by loss. Years earlier, Ethan's father had worked as a senior engineer at Neurovale. During a high-stakes product rollout, internal warnings about system vulnerabilities were allegedly ignored in favor of market deadlines. The resulting failure cost investors millions and employees their jobs. Among those laid off was Ethan's father, who struggled with the humiliation and financial strain. Though public reports framed the event as a minor setback, internally it had been brutal. Ethan had watched his father's confidence crumble, watched medical bills pile up as stress triggered severe health issues. When his father passed away 2 years later, Ethan carried quiet resentment toward the corporate machine that had prioritized profit over people. Yet he had never imagined crossing paths with his architect. As Ethan layered the cake's tiers, smoothing frosting into silk-like perfection, memories resurfaced. Each brush of gold leaf felt like gilding an empire built on overlooked sacrifices. Still, professionalism guided his hands. Maria's bakery thrived on integrity. She had raised her staff to treat every order with equal care, whether for a child's birthday or a billionaire's gala. The final product was breathtaking. A luminous phoenix mid-flight, wings outstretched in shimmering arcs, perched atop tiers fading from deep midnight blue to radiant gold. It was less a dessert and more a monument. On the morning of the event, a black limousine arrived to transport the cake to Pierce's penthouse overlooking Central Park. Ethan volunteered to accompany Maria for the delivery, claiming he wanted to ensure the sugar sculpture remained stable. Maria appreciated his dedication. Neither anticipated that within hours, this masterpiece would become the centerpiece of a scandal no one could have scripted. At the penthouse, preparations were in full swing. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light across marble floors. Celebrities, investors, and political figures mingled beside an indoor waterfall installation. Pierce, charismatic in a tailored midnight suit, welcomed guests with polished charm. When Maria and Ethan unveiled the cake, a collective murmur of admiration rippled through the room. Pierce approached, eyes gleaming, not with gratitude, but with appraisal. He circled the cake slowly, examining every angle. For a moment, silence hung thick as sugar syrup. Then, faintly, he frowned, a nearly invisible imperfection. One petal of sugar slightly tilted, caught his attention. To anyone else, it was negligible. To Pierce, it was a flaw in a symbol meant to represent perfection. He turned to Maria with a smile too tight to be warm and remarked loudly enough for nearby guests to hear, "I suppose even small shops try their best." The comment drew uncomfortable laughter. Maria felt her cheeks burn. Ethan's hands clenched at his sides. Pierce continued, critiquing details that were, in truth, immaculate. His words sharpened, slicing through the celebratory air. "When you charge what I'm paying," he added, "I expect excellence, not effort." The remark stung deeper than intended. Maria began to apologize, but Ethan stepped forward. Something inside him fracturing under the weight of humiliation, layered atop years of buried resentment. And in the next suspended heartbeat, the unthinkable happened. The ballroom froze in disbelief as Ethan's hands moved with startling decisiveness. In one swift motion, he lifted the towering cake, carefully balanced moments earlier, and hurled it toward Alexander Pierce. Gasps erupted like fireworks detonating indoors. Time seemed to slow as layers of gold-dusted sponge and cascades of buttercream sailed through the air in a glittering arc. The phoenix shattered upon impact, sugar wings dissolving against Pierce's tailored suit. Cream and ganache splattered across marble floors, designer gowns and priceless art pieces. A stunned silence followed the wet, thunderous collision. Pierce staggered backward, face dripping with frosting, eyes wide with shock that eclipsed anger. Cameras, inevitable at any gathering of elite, captured every frame. Guests clutched champagne flutes midair, uncertain whether to laugh, flee, or intervene. Maria stood petrified, horror etched across her face as security surged forward. Ethan did not resist. His chest heaved, not from fear, but from a release long contained. Security guards seized Ethan's arms, but he remained composed. "You don't get to humiliate people for sport," he said, voice steady yet resonant. His words cut deeper than the cake splatter. Pierce wiped frosting from his eyes, fury beginning to eclipse disbelief. "Do you have any idea who I am?" he demanded. Ethan met his gaze. "Yes," he replied quietly. "I do." Murmurs rippled as guests recognized the undercurrent of something personal. Maria pleaded with security to release Ethan, apologizing profusely. She feared the collapse of her business, lawsuits, ruin. Pierce, however, raised a hand, halting his guards. Pride wore with calculation behind his frosting-smeared composure. Public image was everything. Causing a scene now could spiral into worse publicity than the assault itself. "What's your name?" Pierce asked coldly. "Ethan Cole." Recognition flickered faintly. Pierce prided himself on remembering employees, but thousands had passed through Neurovale's halls. Ethan continued before he could dismiss him. He spoke of his father, of the warnings ignored, of layoffs delivered through impersonal emails. He spoke not as an attacker, but as a son. The ballroom transformed into a courtroom of conscience. Guests listened, transfixed. Pierce's jaw tightened. "Business decisions are complex," he replied. "You can't reduce them to personal vendettas." "Tell that to families who paid the price," Ethan countered. The exchange, raw and unscripted, spread across social media within minutes. Live-stream snippets circulated with captions ranging from outrage to admiration. Some condemned Ethan's action as assault. Others hailed it as a symbolic rebellion against corporate arrogance. The image of a billionaire drenched in gold-flecked frosting became an overnight emblem. Maria feared bankruptcy. Yet amid chaos, something unexpected unfolded. Pierce, acutely aware of the cameras and the shifting narrative, recalibrated. Instead of pressing charges immediately, he dismissed security and requested privacy. Guests buzzed in confusion as he led Ethan and Maria to a quieter room. There, stripped of spectacle, Pierce's demeanor shifted subtly. Anger remained, but curiosity edged in. "You think throwing a cake fixes anything?" he asked. "No," Ethan admitted, but staying silent never did. For the first time that evening, Pierce seemed less a titan and more a man confronted by consequences not measured in stock prices. He requested details about the internal warnings Ethan mentioned. Maria watched in stunned silence as a confrontation transformed into dialogue. Outside, party planners scrambled to salvage the event. Staff cleaned frosting from marble. Musicians resumed tentative melodies. Yet the energy had irrevocably changed. The celebration of wealth had morphed into an unplanned reckoning. By dawn, headlines blazed across digital platforms. News outlets replayed the cake-throwing clip on loop. Commentators debated privilege, accountability, and workplace ethics. Hashtags trended globally. Neurovale stock dipped briefly amid investor anxiety. Public relations teams worked frantically to contain narrative damage. Maria's bakery phone rang incessantly, not with cancellations, but with interview requests and unexpected orders. Many customers expressed solidarity, praising the stand against elitism. Others threatened boycotts, accusing the bakery of unprofessional conduct. Maria felt torn between pride in her employees' courage and fear for her livelihood. Pierce convened an emergency board meeting. Advisors urged decisive legal action to project strength. Yet something lingered from Ethan's words. Internal audits were initiated quietly. To the board's discomfort, preliminary findings revealed overlooked risk reports from years prior, reports that aligned disturbingly with Ethan's account. Meanwhile, Ethan faced potential charges despite Pierce's hesitation. Legal analysts debated whether his act constituted assault or protected protest. Ethan himself avoided media, retreating to care for his grieving mother, who feared renewed public scrutiny. He questioned whether his impulsive act had achieved anything beyond spectacle. Unexpectedly, Pierce requested a second meeting, this time without cameras or lawyers. He invited Ethan and Maria to Neurovale's headquarters. There, amid glass walls and innovation labs, Pierce disclosed audit findings. Mistakes had been made, warnings sidelined, accountability blurred by ambition. For perhaps the first time, he acknowledged the human cost behind quarterly reports. "I built an empire," Pierce admitted quietly, "but I may have stopped listening along the way." He proposed a restitution initiative, compensation packages for affected former employees, reinstated benefits, and the establishment of an ethics oversight committee led by independent engineers. He offered Ethan a role within the committee, not as an employee beholden to hierarchy, but as an external advisor ensuring voices like his father's were never dismissed again. Maria watched the unlikely negotiation unfold with cautious hope. Ethan hesitated. Trust was fragile. Yet the opportunity to enact tangible change outweighed the satisfaction of symbolic rebellion. Outside corporate walls, public discourse continued. Some dismissed Pierce's actions as damage control. Others viewed them as rare corporate humility. The cake incident evolved from meme to movement, prompting broader conversations about executive responsibility in tech industries. Months later, the narrative had shifted from scandal to reform. Neurovale implemented transparent reporting systems and employee advocacy channels. Industry competitors, wary of similar backlash, began reviewing their own practices. Pierce's birthday gala became a case study in leadership seminars, a reminder that power insulated from accountability courts disaster. Sweet Crumb's Atelier thrived unexpectedly. Customers traveled across states to visit the bakery that had dared challenge a billionaire. Maria ensured growth never compromised integrity. She expanded carefully, opening a second location while maintaining the warmth that defined her brand. As for Ethan, he accepted the advisory role cautiously. He worked not out of loyalty to Pierce, but devotion to preventing repeat harm. Over time, professional respect developed between the two men. tempered by honesty rather than flattery. Pierce never forgot the sting of buttercream sliding down his face before a room of elites. Ethan never forgot his father's quiet suffering. Between those memories lay a fragile bridge. On the first anniversary of the infamous birthday, Pierce hosted a markedly different gathering. No gold leaf, no towering spectacle. Instead, a modest celebration at a community innovation center funded by Neurovale's new outreach program. At the center stood a simple cake crafted by Sweet Crumbs Atelier. 3 tiers, elegantly understated. When Pierce cut the cake, he invited Ethan to stand beside him. Cameras flashed again, but this time the story was not humiliation. It was transformation. Guests applauded not extravagance, but accountability embraced. What happened after the cake flew was not merely scandal. It was confrontation, introspection, and change set in motion by an act as impulsive as it was symbolic. A billionaire learned that respect cannot be purchased. A baker proved that dignity outweighs fear. And a single shattered phoenix gave rise to something far more enduring than spectacle: the courage to listen. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, because you never know whose life can change in a single moment.